My name is Karishma Kusurkar. I'm a multidisciplinary designer. I'm co-director of Belfast Design Week and the founder and collaborator on many ventures, including Small Town Big Dreams podcast. I got started way back whenever I first started studying fashion and textile design. From there, I'd never thought that I wanted to set up my own business. I thought I'd go and work for a design agency, so that is where my career was headed towards. I got experience working in different places, including Topshop print design and Vogue India, and on film sets as well. And then I studied for my master's and I changed my mind, and I thought entrepreneurship is something I'm really interested in, and I decided to turn that into my career. So I set up my own business in 2014 and it's been going ever since. It's evolved since then as well. Started off with print and accessories, and now it's definitely much more multidisciplinary, including things like podcasts and events and other completely different things to what I started out with as well. So I've always done a few different things. I started off and I was starting my own business, but I was also facilitating on different workshops. So I worked with companies including Arts Ecta, so that was doing lots of design and arts and crafts workshops with them. Also doing some part-time lecturing as well. So there have always been other avenues of income as well as selling my products and getting that out there as well, because I think at the start it's very difficult to just launch and immediately start selling, and it's not realistic either. You're sort of told that, oh yes, and then you'll start making money immediately, but that's not actually true. So it's just it's been a learning curve. I've been very excited from the very start, but it's not been easy. It's very challenging, and for me the challenge also was that I was initially trying to manufacture products locally, and the big challenge is that there isn't any sort of platform to understand how to do that. Or there is some mentorship, but it's much more general. It's not for the design sector or for fashion and textiles, which I think has actually changed since then. But I think back then there wasn't really very much guidance, and that was a massive struggle. And yeah, just working really hard, but trying to make those connections as well, because I think people underestimate the power of connections. If your family is in business already, they already have those connections, and if they don't, or if you don't have anybody that you're starting from scratch. You're starting your own little book of people and connections and meeting people. So it's a lot of work from the start to get all of that up and running, and it takes years actually to successfully do all of that as well. I think I understand myself much better than I did when I was starting out, and I understand where I want to go with the projects I'm doing as well. At the very start, the product led what I was doing, so it was very much I want to do accessories, whereas now it's very much project based. That is this the right outcome for this particular problem? So it's very much working across lots of different mediums, but that are right for that particular issue or that particular project as well, which I find really interesting. It's much more varied, and accessories, yes, still can do those as well, but it's not the only thing I'm doing now. I think I'm much more resilient than I thought I was, and I can actually do quite a lot of different kinds of things. But what I do really badly is I actually skim read loads of stuff. So I've learned to just stop and take in the details a bit better and just focus in a bit more and take things where I can a bit more slowly. I have a tendency to rush through life, so I've tried to pace that better, although I don't know if that's working yet, but that's what I'm trying to do. Oh, I don't think I have a very good work-life balance. I did for a while at the start of lockdown, where I was doing the Couch to 5K and I had like a bit of time to myself. But generally I'm really bad at work-life balance, and I'm trying to get better at it, but everyone always says that, but it's really difficult. And I think you just have to be flexible with your work-life balance, that there's going to be times that you're really, really busy and you just have to work really hard and really late. But then you have to then have a time that's a bit more fallow, or where you don't do very much and you're just letting yourself rest as well. And that's where recently I haven't had that much of time to do that, and I'm trying to incorporate that into my diary and be strict with my no's during that time, because it's very tempting to just pencil things in and just keep going, but it's just making sure you take that time out and after a busy period. Oh, that's again another really tough question. Lots of advice, because I'm always somebody that looks back and says, oh, I should have done this, 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 and this. I suppose like you could do that and you'd have a totally different path and end up somewhere else. I suppose investing the time to just take it slowly and focus on what you really want to achieve in the long term. I feel sometimes I've just rushed through things very quickly and not really thought a bit ahead about where I want to go. So I think I would slow down, really focus on what it is I want to achieve. So design thinking is a set of tools that you can use to create a better product or service, or any kind of project really. And at the center of it all is that it is human-centered and it's looking at the end user who you're creating something for. So it takes you through different steps that include empathizing with that end user, defining what it is you're actually trying to do, what problem you're trying to solve, coming up with lots of different ideas and solutions, and then focusing on one or two to take forward and test as well. But the main thing about it is that it's also an iterative process. So it means that you're going through it over and over again. So when you reach the end, it's not the very end. When you're releasing it out to people to look at, that's not the end of it. You can always go back if it's failed, if it's not worked, you can take it back to the start and start again as well. So it's just a simple way of doing things. It started out from the D School at Stanford University in America, and has developed since then into lots of different versions of it as well. And you'll see with the Design Council, they have a double diamond process that is very similar as well. But all of these things are just tools that you can use to be a better designer and to be a better maker of different things. So design thinking can be applied to all industries. It's not only for digital, as some people assume, because they see design thinking and it's used for apps, but it can even be used for fashion or graphic design or anything else. So an example would be if you're trying to redesign a space, a public space, what you have to look at is who's using that public space. It might not be the person you think is using that space. So it's empathizing with that user. Are there people that are finding it difficult to access it? Are there people with disabilities? Are there young people? Are there older people? And then it's designing that space around them, really. It's also where you can engaging with them, because you might have an idea in your head as to what's good for them, but they might have a totally different idea as to what they're looking for. But it's bringing those things together. So it's your expertise as a designer, but also understanding where they're coming from. You know, if you're creating a dress for somebody, you wouldn't just create it, yourself and then take it to them. You'd want to find out what sort of size they are, what sort of fashion they like, what sort of fabrics, maybe they're allergic to some sort of fabric. It's understanding who it is you're creating something for and then coming up with something that really suits them. Because at the end of the day, then they'll be a happy customer or a happy user. They'll be shouting your praises for what you've done. And actually maybe not even shouting your praises and not saying anything at all, because sometimes people notice the bad design, but they won't say anything about the good design. So it's making sure that your design is good and that it functions well. Nothing is foolproof. So you might find that you've created something and you haven't maybe noticed something that somebody else does and says, oh, this isn't working. And the same way that apps have a bug in the system and people are constantly sending updates, the same way you can use that process again to figure out where that's gone wrong and then go through it again and maybe speak with maybe a user that you hadn't identified before, and just reiterate and improve the product. Because products never end when you've made them, there's always another version or the next thing that's a bit better than the previous one. I'm a multidisciplinary designer, which means that I'm just working on different kinds of projects. So everything from podcasts to graphic design and visuals. And I suppose the way that I'm creating things is always looking at that end user at the very start and doing some research around it. What I find is that I might not always know about the topic or theme or idea behind the project. So it's important to do that research at the start and just find out a bit more. Finding out who the end user is actually really helps define what it is you're creating, what style of thing, where it appears. For example, if somebody is older, they might not have as much access to digital. So are you creating a printed version for them? Or if somebody has some sort of accessibility issue, how are you making it a bit more understandable? I'm a massive fan of using clear language wherever I can, because I think sometimes designers like to use complex language or overcomplicate things, and it's nice to just bring it back to the basics, because you want it to be easy to understand, accessible, and have good user engagement no matter what it is that you're doing. Yes, design thinking definitely applies to my business values as well, because I think it's not that I necessarily go through all the sets of tools for everything. For example, if I'm doing reviews for a podcast, it might not necessarily be relevant for that, but maybe looking at certain elements of it, like empathizing with who's listening to this podcast, what would they find interesting. You can use elements of the design thinking process within what you do as well. I think design thinking has often been the preserve of people that are working in design thinking or working on digital products and services. But what I would love to see is people in other areas of design, like fashion or graphic design, just take it on as a tool, because it is for everyone, and even for non-designers really, a really useful tool to have. And it just simplifies that whole process. You understand your end user, and it's just a really good tool to have in your toolkit.